He says he wants a clear picture of what happened. Storms sweep across several.
Let's bring in our political reporter Pablo Vinales now. Hi Pablo, so how's the government trying to frame?
Is Asia First.
I am again thankful to all news media outlets for letting me use their contents. I greatly appreciate that. I am available 24/7 if they need any assistance. Now go to the headlines. Hi and very warm welcome at Amir Shackle 5858. I am Amir Shackle. Following news headlines have been reported by world major English news channels and news agencies. So please watch it.
Tonight, the showdown over deportations. The Supreme Court blocking the White House from removing some Venezuelan migrants under the Alien Enemies Act. This holiday weekend, millions are on alert as severe weather rips across the nation's heartland. And what we're learning about the suspect in the deadly Florida State shooting. First, at the last minute, the High Court wading into the deportations battle. 7 of the 9 justices granting an emergency request from the ACLU, temporarily halting the planned removals of hundreds of Venezuelan migrants to that notorious prison in El Salvador. So what happens next? As controversy grows over the fate of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, new details on his deportation status and his visit with Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen as President Trump doubles down. Selena Wang from the White House. More than 30 million Americans on alert for severe weather across the central U.S. on a busy holiday travel weekend. The new flash flood concerns after days of heavy rain, strong winds, hail, and several reported tornadoes. Our weather team timing it all out. New details about the suspect in the deadly Florida State University shooting. A former teacher breaks down in tears, remembering the little boy in her 4th grade class. And one of the survivors taking her first steps, her determination as she faces a tough road ahead. High-stakes meetings in Rome. The U.S. and Iran hold talks on the country's nuclear programs. Marcus Moore is there. 30 years later, the 168 victims of the Oklahoma City bombing are remembered. Still one of the worst acts of domestic terrorism in the United States. The new addition in Dodger Blue, superstar Shohei Ohtani and his wife celebrate the birth of their first child. And the force is strong in Japan. 100,000 fans from 125 countries celebrating their love of Star Wars and some major announcements. From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World
Tariffs after holding more trade talks this week. He says he is confident he can reach a deal. Welcome back. President Trump touting progress on tariffs after holding more trade talks this week. He says he is confident he can reach a deal with both the EU and China. So should this reassure consumers? Former International Trade Commission chief and business professor at the University of Maryland, Peter Morici, is with me now. Peter, good to see you this morning. So what about this? Right now there's a 90-day pause on tariffs, right? And we believe that at least 15 countries, maybe more, are negotiating deals with the Trump administration, but not China. And they're about to be hit with 145% tariffs or more, and we're going to be hit with about the same number. So is it true? Do you think there are talks in the works with China? Where are we right now?
Well, from what I'm reading and what I'm hearing, we're not very far along with China, and we're not likely to get an agreement. You know, we reached a deal with them during the first Trump administration, and verbally, and we wrote it down. And then when the Chinese actually focused on it, they walked away. The EU is a different thing. We had ongoing negotiations with them. They have a trade agreement with Canada. And the trade agreement we have with Canada and the agreement with the EU, they're somewhat mergeable. You know, there's some potential there. But the real rub is he wants our allies, so to speak, to align their policies towards China with ours. That would mean they would be ceding to us, you know, their sovereignty to negotiate their own deals. That's an awful tough ask.
Yeah. One of the things that the administration has put out there is their policy or their plan to isolate China. Let's take a look at this excerpt from Politico. It says, tariff deals with Asian countries, as well as dozens of others across the globe seeking to negotiate with the U.S., will isolate China, disrupt the Chinese supply chain, and threaten to cut the country off from the rest of the world. Is this a good idea? Do you think China will be forced to come to the table if we isolate them?
A lot of the reason that Donald Trump is president and that we are in the mess we're in is because of China. And I think the world can get along very nicely without China. Not immediately, but the reality is there isn't anything they make that is so magical it can't be made someplace else. They subsidize all their exports. They protect their domestic market. We had 2 years of negotiations with them. We thought they were going to unwind this stuff. And then when they focused on what it would mean, they didn't. They view us as a society in decline. They want to destroy American capitalism, democracy. My feeling is you don't do business with people like these. If we could reach good, constructive free trade agreements with our principal allies, and I think it would be just fine. I've advocated huge tariffs on China for some time now, and how to phase them in so it doesn't disrupt our economy too much.
It seems like
Tonight, millions of people in the path of severe weather right in the middle of the holiday weekend. A line of storms marching across the country, threatening to upend the holiday weekend travel rush. The system bringing punishing hailstorms and spawning massive tornadoes like these. Tonight, millions from Texas to the Northeast are under threat. We are watching it all. The White House facing pushback as massive protests across the country against President Trump and his second-term agenda, including this one in Washington. And the Supreme Court intervenes in the case of accused gang members from Venezuela temporarily blocking their deportation from this Texas facility. Putin's surprise move as Russia declared a truce in its war with Ukraine. And tonight, Ukraine's president responding to the unexpected peace effort. Could this lead to a longer pause in fighting? Coming to grips with a tragedy, anger and grief on the campus of Florida State University after that deadly shooting there. But we're learning about the suspected gunman as his mother speaks out. Fighting crime from your front porch. Police using a new crime-fighting tool, your doorbell camera.
We're seeing more frequent apprehensions and faster apprehensions of suspects.
How it works and what you should know about your privacy. And 30 years later, remembering the victims and the heroes of the Oklahoma City bombing.
This is NBC Nightly News. Your dream school abroad is closer than you think with the Duolingo English test.
Zeroing in on party platforms this Saturday night. Mark Carney unveils the costed Liberal plan promising new health and defense funding and no tax hikes.
This plan meets the moment with overwhelming force.
While the NDP pledges more doctors, affordable housing, and a wealth tax to help pay for it. Pierre Poilievre says the Conservative platform is coming soon as he announces a mandatory drug treatment plan for prisoners. Plus, constitutional clash, a Supreme Court ruling halting President Trump's plan to deport Venezuelans. And whiteout fever in Winnipeg.
We're making it to the end.
After a first-place finish, the Jets kick off their Stanley Cup chase.
Global National reporting tonight.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. With less than 10 days to go until Canadians choose their next leader, two major federal parties have finally unveiled their full platforms. Liberal leader Mark Carney and NDP leader Jagmeet Singh laid out their plans, each promising billions in new spending. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, who has yet to release his fully costed plan, is already criticizing the Liberals' platform as too expensive. We'll have more on that in a moment, but we begin tonight with a closer look at what the parties are promising and how it could affect you. David Aiken begins with the Liberal plan, which calls for $130 billion in new spending over 4 years. David?
Well, Lisa, what we've got is a 67-page platform that puts some details. Into the broad plan that Liberal leader Mark Carney has been talking about throughout this campaign. And of course, it's a plan that Carney says is set up to protect Canada from the threat of Donald Trump's tariffs. And Donald Trump, by the way, is mentioned 8 times in this platform, and Carney's chief political rival Pierre Poilievre is mentioned just 6 times.
This plan meets the moment with overwhelming force.
Over the course of the campaign, Carney has talked about promises to reduce internal trade barriers, to improve energy independence, and to build more homes. The platform confirmed commitments to maintain national pharmacare, national dental care, and to keep the $10 a day child care plans. But new promises are also revealed. Promises you'll likely hear Carney talk about in the last week of the campaign, such as Liberals are promising to
And free, like this eagle. Not an eagle.
Today today, an investigation underway after a man was killed in a street fight at a popular night strip in Melbourne's inner southeast.
Yeah, I think that's concerning for anyone who wants to see violence when they come out for a good night out.
Ukraine says it remains under attack by Russia, despite Vladimir Putin calling a 30-hour Easter truce. The US and Iran agreed to meet again for further talks after progress was made on a possible nuclear program deal. And the Prime Minister attends Easter Sunday service as candidates enter the final fortnight before Election Day. Hello and welcome to ABC News. I'm Nadia Daly. A 30-year-old man has been fatally stabbed in a popular clubbing precinct in Melbourne's inner southeast early this morning. Reporter Kate Ashton has the details.
I'm here on Chapel Street in Prahran, a popular nightlife area in Melbourne's inner southeast. Now, police were called to the scene and a 30-year-old Mickleham man had allegedly been stabbed multiple times. The man was taken to hospital, but he died from his injuries on his way. The man was known to police, and police say they don't believe it was a random attack, but they're still trying to figure out exactly what happened. It was a busy area, and it's believed people were running up and down the street at the time. Police have now recovered a gun from the scene, but they're not sure if it's a fake or not. It's in Hong Kong, 9:30 in New Delhi, and 11 o'clock in Jakarta.
This is Asia Now.
It's 12 p.m. in Singapore and Hong Kong, 9:30 in New Delhi, and 11 o'clock in Jakarta. I'm Grace Shin, and at this hour, Russian President Vladimir Putin declares a surprise one-day Easter truce. Ukraine indicates it will observe the temporary ceasefire, but says Russia has not stopped firing its artillery on the front line. The U.S. and Iran report progress after their second round of nuclear talks in Rome. Both sides agreed to continue negotiations and meet again next week in Oman. Ceasefire negotiations under threat as Israeli leader Benjamin Netanyahu orders the military to intensify pressure on Hamas to release remaining hostages. The militant group says it will do so only if the war ends. Our top story this hour, Russian President Vladimir Putin has declared a surprise one-day Easter truce over in Ukraine, and the ceasefire is the most significant pause in fighting in more than 3 years of war. Ukraine, Good morning, it's 7 o'clock. On today's show, we hear about the harsh reality of life as a prison guard. And in sports, Aston Villa laid down a marker in the race for Champions League qualification with a sensational win over Newcastle. It's Easter Sunday, 20th of April, after the alleged attack on 3 prison guards by the Manchester Arena bomb plotter. We hear from an ex-officer about life working at the jail.
When you've seen a serious assault and you're mocking your colleagues on the floor, and you don't know if they'll be okay, and then 10 minutes later you've got to get back on with your day.
President Putin attends an Easter service after declaring a military ceasefire, but President Zelensky says attacks are, in fact, continuing. Well, Christians worldwide are marking Easter, with the royal family expected to attend a service in Windsor later this morning. And in the Six Nations, England scored 9 tries in a big win over Scotland to set up a Grand Slam decider against France. Morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us here on The Breakfast Show.
You're watching France 34. This is Daybreak with me, Peter O'Brien. It's Easter Sunday, and Ukraine has accused Russia of violating a truce. If the fighting does end up stopping, the pause could be the longest of the war. The Pope, recovering from a near-death illness, is to make a highly anticipated appearance for celebrations at the Vatican. And Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu orders his troops to up the pressure on Hamas as Israelis up the pressure on Netanyahu in the streets. This Sunday morning, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said Russia is continuing to attack despite calling a truce for Easter. He says Ukraine's forces have reported 59 Russian shelling attacks and 5 frontline assault attempts this Sunday. Russian President Vladimir Putin attended Mass on Saturday after announcing the truce, meant to last until midnight this Sunday. Ukraine said they would observe it too, meaning it would be the most significant lull in fighting of the 3-year war. We spoke to Emmanuel Chaz, our correspondent in Kyiv, as Easter bells rang out.
This morning, President Zelensky highlighted the fact that this truce doesn't seem to have been respected by those who actually announced it, the Russian side. And it's also what I hear from soldiers on the front line who I could talk to last night. First off, everybody was really surprised that such a truce was announced because they could notice no difference on the front line. And then we also got reports.
Good morning and a very happy Easter. It is the greatest story ever told.
Yes, and the most important date on the Christian calendar. This morning we're going to be reflecting on the importance and Yes, and the most important date on the Christian calendar. This morning we're going to be reflecting on the importance and the meaning behind today, Easter Sunday.
Or the King and Queen at the annual Easter service with other members of the royal family at St George's Chapel in Windsor, but the Prince and Princess of Wales aren't going to be there. That's raising a couple of eyebrows.
A failed Easter ceasefire. President Zelensky accuses Russia of failing to uphold the Easter truce announced by Putin less than 24 hours ago.
It's been reported the French President Emmanuel Macron will be given a state visit to the UK in May, before President Trump's visit in September.
Well, I will not be in the happiest place of my life right now. So I obviously am going to be competing in the London Marathon and raising as much funds as possible for the Royal British Legion.
That is RAF veteran Ben, who is set to run the London Marathon to raise funds for the Royal British Legion, as he said. That's the charity that helped him when he became homeless.
As the number of foreign language teachers is down by more than a fifth, we're asking, is it time to reinvest in languages in our schools?
And it wouldn't be Easter without a bit of chocolate, really, would it? We'll be sharing some of the top treats to crack into.
Can't wait for that. Now, Ollie Watkins wasted no time shaking off his midweek chat.
Hello, good morning. Will the day ahead be dry and bright with sunny spells? Find out all the weather details coming up soon.
It's just gone 7 o'clock. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is GB News Breakfast.
Africa News. The news. Tanzania's main opposition party said it had failed to get access to its leader, who is in detention on treason charges. Chadema said Friday that the family and lawyers of Tundu Lissu had failed to see him at a Dar es Salaam jail, where he had been kept since his arrest on April 9. In a statement, the party said it held the Tanzanian government and prison service responsible for Lissu's safety. The prison service quickly denied that Lissu had been moved from jail. In a statement, the agency dismissed Chadema's concerns as misinformation. Lissu came second in Tanzania's 2020 presidential election. Last week, he was arrested and later charged with treason after a speech demanding election reforms. Prosecutors said the speech called for an uprising. With another presidential vote in October, critics say President Samia Suluhu Hassan's government has ramped up repression against the opposition. This week, the Election Commission banned Chadema from taking part in October's election after the party refused to sign a document pledging to respect the Commission's orders.
Rwanda has agreed to give safe passage to Southern African Development Community forces. This was confirmed by the Rwandan Minister of Foreign Affairs, Olivier Nduhungirehe, who confirmed this was at the request of SADC, who had requested to use the Eastern African Territory as they exist the war-ravaged Eastern Congo. Kigali has in the past been critical of the SADC forces' position in Congo, straining its relations with countries like South Africa. SADC forces have suffered a number of casualties in the previous months from the ongoing war. The forces of several thousand peacekeeping troops from South Africa, Malawi and Tanzania had been sent to Eastern Congo by SADC in 2023 to help the Congolese government pacify a mineral-rich region in the country.
Carlo Ancelotti has eluded speaking about his future after recent reports that again linked the Real Madrid coach with the move to Brazil's national team. The veteran Italian manager told reporters at a pre-game press conference that he didn't want to speak about his plans. Ancelotti is under contract with Madrid through June 2026. I regret nothing. Like I've always said, I have had a great relationship with the club since I arrived. I always had it, and I will always have it. everything we've done and everything we will do and everything we'll try to do from now on, we will do it together. We never had and we will never have any kind of confrontation. Saying there's some kind of confrontation between me and the club is unreal. It's lying to the people. Speculation regarding his career plans has once again sparked after Madrid's exit from the Champions League this week. Britain Sky Sports has reported that he will step down following the Copa del Rey final against Barcelona on April 26.
Thank you very much for giving time to Amir Shekel 5858. I am Amir Shekel. Have a good life. Bye-bye.